Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 24 hours, President Donald J. Trump has just dropped the political equivalent of a nuclear bomb. Now, imagine this. The same tariffs that the media call terrifying, the same tariffs that critics swore would destroy the economy, are now being turned into cold, hard cash that could land directly in the pockets of America's seniors. We're talking about a brand new bill in Congress right now. This is a bill that doesn't just tweak Social Security, but it threatens to flip the entire system upside down forever. Now, for decades, Washington promised to protect your retirement, but they kicked the can down the road. They lied to your faces, and they ultimately left seniors hanging, right? So now, with more than $2 trillion in tariff revenue on the line and the Social Security Trust Fund set to run dry in just a few short years, Trump's plan could either save millions of retirees or it could spark the biggest economic showdown in U.S. history. Drop a 47 if you're behind Trump's idea to save Social Security right now, folks. Here's the twist, though, that nobody saw coming. What critics once screamed was a hidden tax might actually become the lifeline for your Social Security check. But make no mistake, this is not a done deal yet. But this is a battle that pits President Trump against globalists, Wall Street, and even members of his own party. So if you're on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, drop an SS in the comments down below, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how these tariffs, Social Security, and a ticking fiscal time bomb just collided and why this could be the most important fight of your lifetime. Now, if you appreciate the news updates, hit the like button and subscribe. Guys, Donald J. Trump sitting in the Oval Office as president of the United States, and right now the stakes could not be any higher. So on the one side, we are looking at a $2 trillion tariff machine, okay? Record-shattering revenue. It's ultimately flowing right into Washington from all of these tariffs that were once mocked as being reckless. But on the other side, we have a brand new bill in Congress that could take that cash and put it directly into the pockets of America's seniors. Now, this is the double shock that has almost every single economist, every lawmaker, and every retiree asking the same question. Will this finally fix Social Security, or will it blow up in America's face? And to understand why this moment matters so much, you have to remember the road that we took just to get here. Because President Trump, he's been chasing this goal since the very start of his presidency. Remember his big, beautiful bill? If anyone remembers the big, beautiful bill, drop me a BBB. It delivered real relief, a $6,000 tax deduction for seniors who are age 65 and up. And for a lot of families, that was the first time that Washington had given them something tangible back. But let's be very clear here, it wasn't the finish line. How many of you guys were disappointed with what you got out of the big, beautiful bill? Now, Trump did his best, but he couldn't make Congress behave, right? Now, that deduction was temporary. It was set to expire in just 3 years. Now, worst of all, it didn't touch everyone. In fact, over 20% of seniors, they're still paying federal income taxes on their Social Security checks. And so imagine you're working your whole life, you're paying into the system, and then you're still getting taxed on the benefits that you earned. Isn't that double taxation? Type in double taxation if you think so. Now, President Trump, he promised more. He promised that he would end Social Security taxes once and for all. Did he not? And now in 2025, he's back, not with a patch, but with a short-term deduction. But this is actually going to push for a permanent fix. I want to explain, okay? But first, the question is, will Washington deliver on that promise this time, or will they let seniors down again? Now, most people, they never read the fine print on their Medicare plan. And that's exactly how insurance companies like it, because hidden inside of the details, those details are what cost you money. Copays, deductibles, lifetime and limited drug coverage. They're screwing people left and right over because they're not reading the fine details. And I'll be honest with you, I usually don't read those little tiny font details. Nobody does. But this is why I partner with Chapter. Their advisors, they dig into the details and they translate them into plain English for free. There's no tricks, there's no confusion, just the truth. Now, one of my viewers said, I finally understood my plan for the first time after talking to Chapter. I realized I'd been paying for coverage I didn't even use. Wow. Yet another person that was getting taken advantage of. So let me ask, would you rather stay trapped in the fine print, or would you rather do what most people are already doing and let Chapter explain it for you for free? Now, most people are already calling the phone number on the bottom of your screen right now, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. The phone number is 909-563-8279, and it's a totally free phone call and service for the Ron Yates community. So tell them Ron says hello when you call them. So this brings us to the very brand new bill, shiny brand new bill, guys, that just hit Congress. And it could be the most consequential Social Security legislation in decades. It's called the You Earn It, You Keep It Act. Now, the name pretty much says it all. For decades, seniors worked, paid into the system every paycheck, only to be taxed again when they collected the benefits that they had earned. Now, this bill finally says enough is enough, folks. It would permanently eliminate federal taxes on Social Security benefits, not just for a few years, not for a few seniors, but for everyone, forever and ever and ever. Amen, right? So now, no more temporary deductions like the ones that we saw with Trump's earlier big, beautiful bill that gave seniors a $6,000 tax deduction, but it was temporary. And it left more than 20% of seniors still paying taxes on their Social Security. This new bill wipes that slate clean. Now, it says if you earn Social Security, you keep it, period, hands down. So if you know someone who's on Social Security, if you know someone who's about to claim Social Security, maybe it's a neighbor, if they're over 65 years old, make sure to share this video with them because we need to get the big push to get this bill passed, okay? Now, the Senate version has already been introduced by Ruben Gallego of Arizona, with a House version from Annie Craig of Minnesota. Now, let's be real, guys. This really does align directly with what President Trump has been fighting for since day one. This is the fulfillment of his promise. No more taxes on seniors' benefits. And this time, the proposal has the momentum that it has the momentum, but it also has the math that backs it, and it's got the money behind it. So it's got 3 additional items that the previous one didn't have. Now, here is where the story takes a jaw-dropping turn. Pay attention, guys. Do not click away because this bill doesn't stand alone. In fact, it's being paired with the single most controversial funding source in America today, tariffs. That's right, guys. So remember when every mainstream economist and media pundit was screaming that President Trump's tariffs were going to destroy the economy? I think a lot of you guys remember that, right? Well, they called them terrifying. They said that this was going to spark a recession. Well, if you fast forward to today, and those same tariffs have become indispensable. In fact, just look at the numbers. Over $400 billion a year in tariff revenue. Already $180+ billion collected this fiscal year alone. And in August, $31 billion in a single month. This is an all-time record high. Now, that's not pocket change. That is money that Washington simply cannot ignore. So here's the kicker. Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are openly bragging about it. They're not ashamed. Why would they be? They're not hiding it. They're calling it a success. Isn't it a success, guys? In a year where America is spending over $100 billion per month just on interest payments, that tariff money is the only thing that's keeping the bond market from panicking. So the big question becomes, can Trump take this mountain of tariff cash and redirect it straight into Social Security? Now, can he turn what the critics once called a hidden tax into a lifeline for seniors? Well, think about the irony first. The very tariffs that the globalists swore were going to wreck America's economy could end up being the tool that saves millions of retirees. Isn't that interesting, right? But here's the real danger, okay? If this revenue stream gets disrupted, if the bond market loses faith, or if foreign trade partners retaliate harder than expected, that lifeline could vanish overnight. So now you're looking at a razor's edge here. Will tariffs become the engine that saves Social Security forever? Or will tying seniors' retirement to global trade battles set the stage for the biggest financial explosion of our lifetime? Let's talk about why this matters so much, okay? Because Social Security is not just strained, it's on life support, and it's not looking good. In fact, the cold hard math says that if nothing changes, the trust fund will run out somewhere between 2032 and 2034. When that happens, every single retiree in America, current or future, faces automatic cuts of anywhere from 23 to 25%. That is not theory, guys. That is not a maybe, and it is rather alarming, but it's the law. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while President Donald J. Trump is leading America back to strength, there's another battlefield where victory is desperately needed. This is the fight against cancer. And today, we're talking about a company that could change everything for patients who have been left behind. Now, this video is sponsored on behalf of Oncolytics Biotech Incorporated, currently listed on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol of ONCY. And this is very critical that you pay attention to what they're doing right now. This is groundbreaking, folks. What they're building with their lead therapy, Pelareorep, could make them one of the most important names in cancer immunotherapy. Now, guys, Oncolytics is no longer just proving the science works. They're executing on a clear clinical plan. In fact, after years of early studies showing promise, the company has shifted into a divisive sprint toward regulatory clarity. Now, Their top priority, this is a registration-enabled pivotal trial in the first-line metastatic pancreatic cancer. This is one of the most deadliest cancers in the world, with virtually no immunotherapy options available today. Now, this isn't a side project. In fact, the FDA has already granted Tariff both fast track and orphan drug designations for pancreatic cancer, which gives oncolytics regulatory advantages and accelerates the timeline. Now, they're actively working with regulators right now to finalize the trial design with overall survival as the primary endpoint. This is the gold standard in cancer trials, and if all goes according to plan, startup activities for that pivotal study could begin before the end of this year. The clinical data that led here is absolutely compelling. In fact, in first-line metastatic pancreatic cancer, historical survival rates were bleak, just 9.2% at 2 years on chemotherapy. But in patients who receive Tariff plus chemo, the survival rate more than doubled to 21.9%. Now, those numbers are exactly why experts are calling pancreatic cancer an ideal starting point and why oncolytics is prioritizing it above everything else. But the plan doesn't stop there. In fact, Tariff is already being tested across multiple gastrointestinal tumors, including colorectal and anal cancer, through ongoing studies like Goblet, which is delivering both safety data and early efficacy signals. Most updates from these programs are expected by the end of this year. Now, here's a real kicker. Tariff isn't just about one cancer type. In fact, it's designed as a platform therapy, a treatment that can be combined with chemotherapy, checkpoint inhibitors, CAR T-cell therapies, and targeted drugs to make them all more effective. The goal is to position Tariff as a backbone across gastrointestinal oncology, the same way President Trump has built tariffs into the backbone of America's trade strategy. Foundational, unavoidable, and very powerful. Now, of course, safety always matters. And here's the story. The story is strong. Tariff has already been dosed in more than 1,200 patients across trials, including over 300 with gastrointestinal tumors, and the profile remains consistent. Most side effects are mild, like flu-like symptoms, with no evidence that Tariff makes chemotherapy any more harsh. That consistency gives regulators and potential partners even more confidence. So what's next on the clinical roadmap? Q3 2025 updated trial timelines for the pivotal pancreatic study. Q4 2025, trial startup activities could begin. End of 2025, new data from the Goblet program in anal carcinoma. In Q4 of 2025, patent extension updates, another important piece of the long-term plan. Now, just as President Donald J. Trump has shown America the power of execution and focus, oncolytics is executing on a clinical plan that could deliver survival benefits where almost no hope exists. Now, that's not just science, guys. That is legacy-building medicine. Now, folks, I am not an investment advisor, and this video should not be considered investment advice. Investors should always conduct their own due diligence before making any investment decisions, okay? When the trust fund dries up, the checks shrink, period. I don't know how old you are. Imagine being 75 years old, you're living on a fixed income, and all of a sudden, 1/4 of your money disappears. How are you gonna make rent? How are you gonna make medications? How are you gonna cover your groceries? Gone. Just like that, right? This is not a talking point. This is a countdown clock, and it's ticking down to disaster. And so here's where President Trump's plan takes a shocking turn, because the same tariffs that critics swore would destroy the economy could actually be the very same thing that saves Social Security as we know it. Now, this new bill doesn't just eliminate Social Security taxes on seniors, it also proposes removing the payroll cap on earnings that are above $250,000. Now, that is a big deal, because right now, the wealthy stop paying Social Security taxes once they hit around $176,000 in wages. Now, imagine someone making $1 million a year who only pays into the system for the first few months of their income. Meanwhile, a middle-class worker, they're paying all year long. You see the difference here, right? So by scrapping that cap, the wealthy would finally pay their fair share. Now, if you combine that with the hundreds of billions of dollars that is literally pouring in from these tariffs, all of a sudden Social Security isn't running dry in 2034 or 2032 for all we know, right? Estimates are actually saying it could stay fully funded all the way to the 2080s. That would add another 50 years. But think about that, guys. The very tariffs that were supposed to break America could become the lifeline that keeps your Social Security check safe for the rest of your life. Now, the question is, will Washington have the guts to lock this in, or will they cave to the same lobbyists and globalists who have been fighting this fight for decades? But of course, not everyone is cheering. The critics are circling. Forbes, Warren Buffett, even some Republicans are blasting this move, saying they're essentially saying the simple truth. Tariffs are taxes. They don't fall from the sky. They didn't come from a magic money tree. They're ultimately paid by the American consumer. That's what they're saying. Every imported good that you buy, every product touched by foreign steel, aluminum, or electronics, you're paying more, and Washington is pocketing the difference. So the critics ask, is this really about saving seniors, or is it just another $2 trillion tax bomb dressed up as patriotism? Now, I'm gonna let you guys decide on that one. Are the tariffs really helping Americans here in America? Or do you see the tariffs really as being a tax bomb? Drop me a comment, guys. So even within the GOP, the split is glaring. So on one side, Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, they're boasting about the record-shattering revenue. But on the other side, fiscal hawks are warning that Republicans bragging about a massive tax increase will come back to haunt them. So this is pretty much where the tension explodes onto the global chessboard, guys, because these tariffs, they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're weapons in a worldwide power struggle. In fact, President Trump is reopening the USMCA with Canada and Mexico. They're demanding more auto production inside of America and tougher enforcement on Mexico's fentanyl crisis. But at the same time, he's pushing back very hard on India, China, and Russia. India has been blasted by buying Russian oil, effectively funding Putin's war. China's tariffs are already sky high, but any misstep could easily derail talks and throw markets into chaos. But here's a real gut punch. If tariff revenue is tied directly to Social Security, then every trade negotiation, every tariff increase or rollback, every foreign crisis, all of a sudden puts your retirement check at risk. Think about it. A breakdown with India, a clash with China, or a miscalculation with Russia, and the very funding source for seniors could be caught in the crossfire. So here's the real question. Is Trump turning tariffs into the ultimate weapon to save America's retirees? Or are we putting Social Security itself on the front lines of a global economic war? That's really what we have to ask ourselves. And just when you think that the stakes couldn't get any higher, you got to look at the fiscal hellhole that America's already in. I mean, we're already paying nearly $100 billion per month in interest on national debt. That's right, guys. Every 30 days, before a single dollar goes to Social Security, Medicare, or defense, $100 billion evaporates into debt payments. Now, this year alone, interest costs are projected to top $1.2 trillion. That is more than we spend on the military, more than we spend on Medicare. It is completely unsustainable. And so this is why President Trump's team is bragging about tariff revenue, because without it, the bond market could revolt. Lenders could stop financing America's debt binge. Now, if that happens, it won't just be Wall Street that feels the pain. No. It will be every American retiree, every worker, and every family. So the situation couldn't be any sharper. Can we really afford to redirect tariff cash to seniors, or will Wall Street strike back? And so this kind of leads us to the final situation here, which is President Trump's vision versus Washington's gridlock. President Trump, he wants to rewrite the rules. He wants to eliminate the Social Security tax on seniors, and he wants to force the wealthy to pay into the system without the loopholes, basically channel the tariff billions of dollars to secure retirement for generations. I know it's bold. It's definitely aggressive. It is the kind of move that no other president has dared to try. But here's the problem. Standing in his way are the very forces that have failed America for decades. Democrats who would rather use Social Security as a bargaining chip. Establishment Republicans are terrified of being branded as tax raisers, and globalists who basically despise the idea of tariff funding anything at all. So the question really becomes this. Will this bill finally deliver the promise that Trump made to seniors? No more Social Security taxes, a fully funded system, and bigger checks in retirement? Or will Washington's dysfunction rob seniors of their moment yet again? Because make no mistake, guys, this isn't just another policy debate. This is, in fact, the fight of a lifetime over the future of Social Security, the future of tariffs, and the future of America itself. So stay alert, guys. Share this video with someone who is over 65, who needs to know the latest news about what's happening with Social Security. Pay attention, because the decisions that are being made right now, Washington could change your retirement, your family, and your country forever.